Hi, everybody. We are back with Volley Talk this week. This week, we are going to be talking about challenging coaches, challenging players, and challenging parents, all to how to have these conversations about when you're maybe not agreeing with either your coach or your parents or anybody. Your parents aren't agreeing with your coach, or you're not agreeing with your coach, what they're teaching, and then also maybe how a coach can handle situations when players approach you with different situations or different mechanics that they are learning elsewhere that maybe you are not teaching. So we're going to kind of talk about all the different perspectives of this conversation that we have, because a lot of the times we talk about the mechanics on here, but we don't really talk about what happens when you have a coach that doesn't teach those mechanics and how can you handle that. So that is what we are going to be talking about today. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Darren Fiakuski. I am the social media manager here with PowerCore. I also play Division I volleyball as an outside hitter at the University of North Dakota, and I also dabbled in a little bit of playing libero there as well. But I'll let Billy go ahead and introduce himself as well.
Hey, Billy Glisson, PowerCore 360 founder, exercise scientist, strength coach, and involved in volleyball for 24, 25 plus years.
Awesome. So I want to start with this conversation starting from, let's do the parents' perspective. So tryouts are coming out for club. We all know that a lot of different clubs, you guys are trying out this week or the next couple weeks for different clubs in your area, maybe. So you're having your kids go to all these different tryouts for clubs. But Billy, what should parents do even prior to tryout when researching what club their daughter should play for? Um, we know there's clubs obviously that maybe people prefer because of their reputation of having good teams and everything like that. But what should the parents do in order for their athletes to get the best experience possible from club?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think the order, the sequence is appropriate and correct because, as you know, in the clinic, a lot of times, most clinics we run, some parent will typically ask, okay, this is different from what my son or daughter's being taught in club, and now they're going to go back. What happens? How does my daughter go in and communicate with them? Well, it's kind of late. You're kind of late behind the eight ball. And so I think the appropriate step is number one, the parent goes in before tryouts, right? And should do their homework. And in essence, they should be, most clubs, the bigger clubs are going to have a technical coach, a head coach from the technical perspective, or a lead coach that's in charge of the technical side, technique training, right? If they don't, then they can approach if they're trying out for 13-1, 16-1, whatever the age group they're trying out for, they should go to the lead coach, the head coach, or the head coach for that team they're trying out for and ask them, what do you guys teach in terms of technique and mechanics, right? And we'll obviously we talk a lot about what we teach, but that is step one, because then you're actually screening the club before you play, before you pay for your tryout fee, right? Before it gets too late, now your son or daughter is stuck in a club or a coach that doesn't teach maybe good technique, proper technique, that doesn't really care except we want to, hit the ball hard and win points and win matches. Do that first, parents. It's your responsibility, and I think it's the appropriate step. Number one, go in and figure out what they teach. I'll stop. I'll put a period on that.
Yeah, for sure. So go in, go interview basically the coach for your daughter or son's team before even tryouts happen. But let's kind of fast forward here. Let's say tryouts have already happened and they've already accepted the offer to be on the team without pre-screening what the mechanics are that they're going to be teaching. What do you suggest the parents do in this type of situation where the coaches now are saying they have to, they're going to teach the kids the mechanics they want, and there's not really another option there?
Well, because I think now we're talking about what does the athlete do, but the parents still, I think we're asking a lot of a 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18-year-old to put that on their shoulders if there's a philosophical or technique difference between, what the athlete's been taught through PowerCore or somebody else and what the coach is teaching or what the club believes in. it's late in the process there. You're asking a lot for a young athlete. They just, quite honestly, I don't think they have the tools, personal skills to be able to go in and communicate with a coach like that. We're asking a lot. So I'm going to go back, Darren, and I'm not ducking the question. We'll answer that, but I just thought of something else. Let's help parents with, okay, you're going in, what kind of questions should you ask the club director, the technical director, right? And so what technique do you use in terms of hitting? Do you teach a high elbow setup? And that's the terminology I throw out there. Are they teaching a high elbow setup, which we don't prescribe to, right? But if they do that, you need to know that, because we don't teach a high elbow. We teach an elbow. We will call it a neutral shoulder. And really, that's what it is. We're talking about the shoulder joint. But that's the kind of terminology. Do you teach whole body rotation? Do you teach your arm and elbow come up high at the end, right before contact, right? Contacts the ball, not early in the. So that would be an appropriate question to ask. Number one is, number two, if our son or daughter doesn't prescribe, doesn't follow your instructions, right? What happens? If they say, well, they won't play, then there's your answer. Do you want to be in that club? Because if what they teach is great, then wonderful. If what they teach is mechanically not so great, a high elbow setup in the swing, that certainly can lead to pain. It can lead to worse things than that. As you know, that stopped you Division I first playing year in college, right? You were sidelined and had to go play libero. It wasn't a choice. You couldn't swing anymore, right? And you were hitting the ball hard like a lot of athletes do. Anyway, with long story made short, what happens if their son or daughter doesn't do what the coach says? Are you going to sit them? What is the philosophy of the coach or the club at that point in time? And I think you really want to know that, because you can bypass a whole lot of problems and issues and pain and maybe injury if you ask those questions up front. So, and Darren, you may have other questions that you think would be, asked as well. Please interject.
Yeah, I mean, I think those questions are really good. I have another question for you, Billy. Let's say these people are from a smaller town and there's only a couple of club choices, and all of those clubs teach high elbow or don't teach full body rotation. Let's say they're all teaching very similar things. What do you suggest parents do in that situation then, especially if their kid wants to play at the next level and needs to be playing club?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, very appropriate. And some of it comes down to, all right, what are they feeling? If the athlete's not having any shoulder pain or back pain, they're not hitting a lot, the volume, right? They're not practicing a lot, they're not hitting a lot, they're not hitting hard. So maybe they're 12 or 13 or 14 and don't quite have much arm speed or power yet, and they don't have any pain. Some people can maybe play many years, take many swings, and never have shoulder pain. Okay, great. No big deal though. Other people, depending on the structure, kind of the way the shoulder's built, their unique anatomy, could create a problem. That athlete at 12, 13, 14 already has shoulder pain. That I'm concerned with that. If I'm the parent, I should be concerned with that as the parent, that it's not normal to have shoulder pain. You shouldn't be trying to push through that, or back pain or anything else. That's not normal. Pain is your body's sign that something's not right. And many times in hitting, it's that the mechanics aren't great. Something isn't being tolerated in the shoulder and or back. So anyway, with that being said, I guess that's the first thing I look at, is if the kid's not having pain and they don't have aspirations of playing, high level club or high school volleyball or college, right? Then maybe it's just fine. They can just do they can play their 4, 5, 6 weeks of high school, 8 weeks, whatever it is, right? And be done and no problem. The kid that has pain, I think we open up a different can of worms, and the importance of what we do from there is different. And I think that escalates it, right? Then we pay attention to the technique. And if now you say to the coach, hey, my son, my daughter's having shoulder pain, what should we do? Most coaches they're not athletic trainers, they're not physical therapists, they're not shoulder specialists, right? They may not know that much about the shoulder anatomy, even though they teach technique a certain way. Then, what happens? Hopefully they would send them to someone like a PT or a doc or a chiropractor, somebody hopefully that's got some expertise medically and understanding the anatomy and the movement, the biomechanics of the shoulder and the swing, and then they would listen to that person, right? If that parent is hearing from the coach, or the coach isn't open to listening to somebody outside, maybe that's also a question you ask up front. What happens if my son or daughter gets shoulder pain or back pain? What happens? are they supposed to push through it? Do you have for many years I worked with Front Range Volleyball Club, and we had Jimmer, who was a physical therapist that worked with the club, right? And so if I didn't know something, at open forum with Jimmer to say, hey, Jimmer, what do you think about this athlete? Or can you look at this athlete's shoulder, right? Before that, we had athletic trainers on staff, right? ATCs. And so we had the ability that if we didn't know something, we had a professional team of people we could consult with, right? So anyway, I'll take a breath there.
Yeah. So I feel like that kind of covers all the stuff that parents should consider, whether or not to join a certain club, or if you're in that situation, kind of how to handle that. But let's shift over to the athlete side now. Let's say for any of the athletes watching here, let's say you guys really want to improve your mechanics and you start learning, let's say, power core and what we teach. You start subscribing to the neutral shoulder and coming through with a high elbow later and a loose arm and all these different things that, we teach all of our athletes how to rotate, everything like that. Let's say this athlete has learned this and has really started to get this down, or is having pain and switch to this type of swing to, help them hopefully get rid of some of that pain, and it has been helping them. What should they say to their coach once the coach starts correcting them and saying, get that elbow high, swing higher if you want to hit the ball over, and says that they can't load neutral, things like that? How should the athlete maybe approach that situation, and when is an appropriate time to approach that?
Yeah, well, I think the appropriate time is as soon as your shoulder or back starts to hurt. Once again, it's the body's warning sign. Go and have a conversation from the defense of the coach. The coach doesn't have a crystal ball. They don't know what an athlete's feeling or not feeling. There's a lot of really good coaches out there. And if the athlete will go say something to the coach, and the coach probably is going to hopefully want to dig into it a little bit more and can make an informed decision on appropriate actions. From the athlete's perspective, right? First and foremost, they need to be, they need to respect the coach. They need to talk respectfully. They need to treat the coach with the utmost respect, and yes sir, yes ma'am, whatever they're taught by their parents, and be respectful, first and foremost. And then communicate with the coach, and then ask the coach, and basically tell the coach, when I swing the way you're asking me to swing, my elbow hurts, my shoulder hurts, my back hurts, my whatever hurts, right? When I do it a different way, maybe the way we teach them to do, that's what we see 99% of the time, maybe more than that, is use your whole body. Your shoulder's not in this high elbow setup position. They hit harder. The shoulder pain goes away because they're using the whole body. There's not so much isolated stress or torque or force on the hitting shoulder. So, I think be respectful, talk to the coach. And if the coach isn't responsive, then that's also telling me something so much as an athlete. But then that athlete should be then sharing with the parent, and the parent gets involved, right? To go have an adult conversation with a coach and say, hey, what's going on, and what can we do about it? Is there someone that the club has, an athletic trainer on staff, a PT, an OT, a chiropractor, a doctor, or someone, right, with a medical and anatomical background that can look at the athlete's shoulder and provide information back to the coach?
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think that there's another side here for the athlete that kind of doesn't really get talking about much, maybe. But it's the side that, if you are performing, what are a lot of coaches going to do, Billy, if this athlete, let's say they're using the mechanics that we teach and they're killing balls left and right? What do you think is going to happen then?
Well, yeah, I mean, the drill. We've talked to a lot of parents and athletes and said this. Some coaches can check their ego at the door, and they'll just like, look, if this athlete, this hitter is scoring, and I don't care how they hit, if they're scoring and hitting the ball hard and being successful, right, winning points, winning matches, right, then most coaches will probably leave the athlete alone after a couple of weeks, and like either they're not listening, something, whatever they surmise, it's fine. The athlete is actually performing, right? So hit the ball hard, score points. That's what coaches want, and they want to score points and win matches. If you do that, my hunch is a lot of coaches will back off their ego and let it go. It's like, who cares? As long as they're playing well and scoring and staying on the court and winning matches, so be it.
For sure. Exactly. So I think that's why it's so important for athletes to, get in and study your training or learn the training for your hitting mechanics in your off season or during the season, during your lower parts of your season, not during the heightened parts. So that way you can take that extra time to change the mechanics, because again, a lot of these coaches, like Billy said, are focused on winning. And your practices aren't necessarily made for your one-on-one coaching time or time to work on your mechanics and things like that. Most club practices are maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours max. Those coaches are just trying to figure out what they need to do to win for the weekend, not necessarily change your mechanics right in that instance. So I think it really falls back onto you as an athlete of how hard you want to work during time that isn't practice time, and during the summer, during your lower parts of seasons, like we said, to be able to switch your mechanics and start to change those over. Can you get in the gym early and do some, hip resisted turns and torso turns and things like that? Can you do arm motion and practice that at home? All those different types of things that are necessary for yourself to grow as a player that are going to happen outside of practices. So I think that's also a big part for the athlete.
And hey, Darian, one thing that made me, just as I was thinking to your response, and of course I agree 100% with your response, but here's the question or the comment I was thinking to myself. I can see a coach sitting out there saying, what are you guys making such a big deal about, right? It's just volleyball, it's a few swings, right? And it's a couple of kids. Well, Darren, you were at the clinic again this weekend in Atlanta, right? And so every weekend, and this week where are we? We're in Fremont, California, and then we're in Lincoln, Nebraska, Omaha on Tuesday. So here's the point. You've seen this. If we ask at the start of our clinic to the athletes in the room, how many of you have had shoulder pain or have shoulder pain? And you know the drill, like 98% of the kids who are 12, 13, 14, most of the time in that age group, a few 16s and 15s and 17s, how many arms are going up? Like 98% of their hands are going up. They've got shoulder pain, they've got back pain, they've got knee pain, and they're 12, 13, 14, right? And once again, it's just like this is not just something to push under the rug and forget it, it's going away. It's like, this is, I don't know if epidemic's probably not the right word, but this is something that coaches need to pay attention to, because for the most part, they're responsible for it, right? This is the technique they're teaching that's taught 98% of the time across the country. And maybe that's a segue into what else? Who else should we be talking to today, right? I mean, is there something we should be talking to the coaches about versus just focusing this on the parent and the athlete? What about the parents? Where do we go from there,
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of the parent and athlete part of it. We can go back to that, but let's switch to the coaches side of it now. So let's say you're a new coach. Let's start with new coaches. You're just coaching clubs, stuff like that. And let's say an athlete comes up and says something like, I have shoulder pain. What should a coach's proper response be in this situation?
Well, one, I would hope that they would care, that they would listen to the athlete, because this is a real human being. And maybe there's some coaches that don't have a son or a daughter, and I have both, and all played sports. And so maybe I have a different perspective. Maybe it's wisdom at my age, right? That it's like, this could be your son or daughter, right? That's out there playing. And so one, coaches care. Two, or you shouldn't be working with young athletes. Care enough to go educate and train yourself and learn from someone. It's not like we're not making this stuff up. I'll give you a couple of references here in just a second of some medical, highly respected doctors, shoulder doctors, that you could go reference some of their stuff that's out there all over the internet, right? So, but care enough to go educate and train yourself and understand what are you teaching. And then before we get into the kind of the medical references, this is Billy's opinion, but I have a lot of friends who are attorneys, and not that we're going to go chase anybody with legal. I'm suggesting there is a legal responsibility potentially here, that Darian, if you're the coach and my daughter comes to you and says, I have shoulder pain, and you say, and what you're teaching them might be the cause of their shoulder pain, and if it's high elbow setup, I'm telling you there's a really high probability that if there is, it's that mechanical technique. That if you continue to say, well, you should continue to do that, you don't search or research outside expertise to get some help, or even worse, now you say to that athlete, You just do it this way or you won't play. Like, you might be taking on some legal responsibility that you don't want. And then ask yourself, in this day and age where there's all this medical, physiological training information that's out there all over Google and the internet, right? That it's not hard to find expertise, people that actually know the anatomy of the shoulder, the spine, the hip, the training, the movements, et cetera, et cetera. Might it be a little bit embarrassing for you as a coach if you're not doing some research and educating and training yourself, and you're just telling the athlete what to do? Because it's going to become pretty obvious pretty quick. There are parents who are professionals, medical professionals, that kids play for your club, right? There's docs, nurse, therapists, chiropractors, all the above, and others, right, that are educated in the field. That's going to become pretty obvious to them if you're not seeking some resources and just, telling the kid to go swing my way because you can't check your ego at the door, right? You should be for the welfare of the kids. And yeah, I would want, if I was a coach, I want the athlete to hit hard and win points and win matches. Everybody wants to win, but I also care enough about the athletes long term that I don't want to destroy their shoulder, their hip, their knee, or back in the process, because their high school, middle school, club, college career is very short, but their shoulder and back needs to function for decades. And as you know, you're seeing it in the clinics. We see it with the parents that sign their athletes up for clinics and master classes. There's a lot of moms that played collegiately that have shoulders now that they have pins and needles. They have pins in their shoulder. They can't raise their hand above their shoulder. Which, Darian, at 22, how's your shoulder functioning right now? Right? I mean, give it.
I don't swing at volleyballs anymore.
Yeah, and you're 22, right? So
23.
what if you were 32, 42, 52, right? We want athletes to function beyond their athletic careers. That's a small window. So anyway.
For sure. I totally agree. I think another point that we can make here is for maybe the coaches that played, but didn't have that pain. Maybe they didn't go play at the next level and now they're just coaching. Maybe in high school they didn't have that pain. And they're kind of just teaching what they got taught because it made them kind of successful. Maybe their team won or in high school and stuff like that. What would you suggest for those coaches that maybe played and they said, this is what I learned, so why would I not teach it this way?
Yeah, boy, you know me, I'm into stories. Mike Bard is a guy in Denver, not too far from you. He's in Parker. He trains professional Major League Baseball players, and I met him probably 10 or 15 years ago. And in a session with him, I walked in. He said, "I'll give you 5 minutes." He didn't know who I was when I called him. And like when I went in 3 hours later, I walked out. He bought equipment. He used our stuff. Long story made short, he said to me, "Billy, a lot of coaches are like parrots. Some parrots just repeat what they hear." And so that's what happens as athletes. You were an athlete. I was an athlete, right? But if I continue to just repeat what I was taught in high school, and that was 50 years ago, right? If I'm still teaching that, pretty good chance times have changed, and that what I learned at the time may have made sense and was right at the time, but it's not. Another story, true story. Probably 15 or 20 years ago, I went to the National Strength Conditioning National Conference. And one of the guys that opened up the conference was the strength conditioning coach for one of the Canadian NHL teams, right? And he opened it up by saying, what I'm about to tell you is right, but it won't be in 10 years, right? Because the science will surpass what we know today, right? It was really made an impact on me. Even the sports science that we're teaching today, it's not all accurate. It's what we know today, but it will change. And so that's really what we want the coaches to understand is go out and do your homework. If you don't want to, we're happy to share. We've got videos on YouTube, one that Kelly and I did with AVCA a couple years ago. And it's an hour and a half long on the shoulder and the biomechanics and the anatomy, and it's free. It's out there on YouTube for us, right? It's out there, and so go educate yourself. Go become informed. And if you don't want to go through us, we're happy to help you. But if not, hey, try some of these references. So Ben Kibler was a medical doctor, shoulder specialist. I think he's up in the Ohio area. I know Kelly is a PT that works with us. Kelly's the one that turned me on to Ben Kibler, right? So if you want to go learn about, functional sense, the anatomy, the movement of the shoulder blade, that's what he did. And he's got some great videos on YouTube and elsewhere. You'll find Ben Kibler, MD, out there. Go learn about the movements, the anatomy, the physiology of the shoulder and the movements, right? And he dealt with and worked with and probably did surgery on a lot of overhand throwing athletes, baseball, football, volleyball, whatever else. go start there, and then go talk to a physical therapist, occupational therapist, a shoulder specialist that understands the anatomy, and then maybe have some understanding of how do you train it. What are the movements and mechanics that make sense? And by the way, does this make sense? Does this high elbow setup make sense, or does it not? So
Yeah, for sure. Some good resources out there. And like you said, a lot of free resources out there for coaches as well. That's ever changing. Like you said, in 10 years from now, the science could change a little bit and there could be new findings of what is actually the best to do for volleyball or for overhead swinging,
yeah,
everything like that. So I think that's all really, really good stuff. We got a question on Instagram here. It says, what are you supposed to do about knee pain once you have it as a volleyball player?
that's probably in the world of Kelly as a physical therapist or an athletic trainer. But here's my short answer as a strength and physiologist, right? Number one, rest and recovery are probably appropriate. If it hurts and it's been hurting, get off of it. Ice for the first, 24 hours is still appropriate for 10 or 15 minutes. Ice on the area 10 or 15 minutes at a time. You can repeat that once an hour. Great. Take that off. 24 to 48 hours later, some people, and that's where you need to talk to your trainer, your coach, your PT, or someone, then you might go ice and heat. But ice initially is a good thing to do. If you've got pain and discomfort for a couple of days, if there's swelling, if there's redness, if you can't bear weight on it, then you certainly need to get off it. You need to go seek some professional help, right? Go see a doc, a chiropractor, a PT, somebody in the medical field that's their specialty area, right? A knee specialist or whatever the case may be. That's probably as quick and general info as I can give.
Yeah, for sure. That's some good information. But I would say that this was a really good, hopefully, learning session for a lot of not only athlete and parents out there, but also some coaches that follow us as well. One thing for all the coaches out there that are wanting to learn stuff, we do have a program to teach coaches that's all virtual. So you could use it with your athletes in your gym and try out the techniques and learn the techniques that we're teaching athletes. So we want to be able to spread this information and have more people benefit from this information that we have and the technique that we use, and have some athletes hit harder and, avoid that pain and injury. It's only better for your team, better for you as a coach. And so yeah, if you want that information, just go to the link in bio. There's a tab that says Coaches Masterclass that is on there. If you do want to check that out, you are more than welcome. Athletes, if you want to do any sort of training, if you are in Tampa or Florida, if you're in Tampa, Florida, we are starting small groups tomorrow. So I think that might already be sold out, but we'll see. So that's happening for us. And then also we have a couple of clinics that aren't sold out yet for this summer. So make sure if you want to hit a clinic, we also just opened up some fall clinics. So if you do want to come to a clinic, either late summer or early late fall, I think it's like October and November. Some of those clinics are open and available for you. Again, just link in bio. Make sure you grab a spot before those sell out. We have sold out every single clinic so far this year. So we are hoping to get one available for everybody to go to. And then lastly, we have our masterclasses as well that you could check out if you do want to learn this technique and you aren't able to travel in person. So those are all some different great options. And we want to thank you guys for joining today and for your comments and your questions. If you do have any other questions about this topic, feel free to DM us or comment on this post, and we'll be sure to answer those and respond to you as good as we can. But yeah, thank you guys all for joining today.